Ladies and gentlemen, self-respect is the bedrock upon which a person, especially a woman, builds her life. It is the foundation of everything she does and everything she becomes. If she loses it, she loses herself. But this is not a concept that is often discussed openly, or honestly, certainly not in modern discourse. We live in a time where the idea of self-respect has been obscured, often replaced by a shallow form of self-esteem that depends on external validation, approval, and applause. True self-respect, however, is not a fleeting, emotional reaction to the transient judgments of others. It is something deeper and more enduring. It is the inner compass that guides you through life's complexity and ensures that no matter what happens in the external world, your sense of worth remains intact. At its core, self-respect is about knowing your value, about having an understanding that you are worthy of dignity and decency, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of the opinions or behaviors of others. A woman must learn to protect this fundamental principle, not as an act of arrogance or selfishness, but as a form of self-preservation. It's about holding a firm boundary between what is acceptable and what is not, both in your behavior and in how you allow others to treat you. The problem in today's world is that self-respect is often confused with external achievements or the validation from others, but these things are unreliable. They are situational, fragile, and fleeting. A woman might gain respect in the eyes of a man, society, or her peers by conforming to expectations, by fulfilling a particular role or standard. But that respect is temporary. It is built on external approval, which can change at any moment, and is subject to all the biases, prejudices, and whims of the world around her. True self-respect is not built on how others see you. It is rooted in an unwavering understanding of your inherent worth. When a woman allows her self-respect to depend on the external world, she subjects herself to constant turmoil. The judgments of others can be harsh, often coming from places of ignorance, envy, or insecurity. It is easy to get caught in a cycle of constantly seeking validation, measuring your worth by the number of likes on a post, the approval of a partner, or the acknowledgement from others. But this is a toxic cycle. It feeds on your need for constant affirmation, leaving you vulnerable to disappointment, frustration, and a diminishing sense of self-worth. Self-respect, therefore, must be cultivated from within. It is a product of knowing your values, knowing what you stand for, and what you are willing to tolerate, and perhaps more importantly, what you are not willing to tolerate. This is a deeply personal and individual journey. It cannot be outsourced to others, nor can it be established by the external world. It must come from within, from the realization that you are a valuable person, regardless of the applause or criticism of those around you. It comes from setting personal standards and holding yourself to them, even when the world tells you that your standards are outdated, irrelevant, or unreasonable. Furthermore, self-respect requires the ability to say no. It is impossible to have self-respect if you cannot protect your boundaries. A woman must know when to walk away from toxic relationships, from situations that undermine her values, and from demands that strip her of her dignity. This is not an act of defiance or selfishness. It is an act of self-preservation. Respecting oneself means refusing to accept treatment that diminishes one's worth, no matter how convenient, appealing, or flattering the relationship may seem at the time. It means recognizing that your own well-being, both mental and physical, comes before the needs or desires of others. It's also important to note that self-respect is not the same as self-absorption or self-centeredness. It is not about being isolated or detached from the world. It's about a balanced view of oneself, where you understand your intrinsic value and at the same time are open to growth and the feedback of others. A woman who holds self-respect does not look down upon others, but she also does not lower herself to make others feel comfortable. She knows her worth, and from that place of inner strength, she interacts with others on equal footing, offering respect without demanding it and expecting it in return. She does not compromise on her values to gain the approval of anyone. Moreover, true self-respect demands that you hold yourself accountable. It means acknowledging your flaws, taking responsibility for your mistakes, and continually striving to improve. A woman who respects herself does not place the blame for her misfortunes solely on external factors, but also looks inward to see what role she might have played in the outcome. This self-reflection is not an act of self-criticism, but of honest evaluation and understanding that she can always grow and become a better version of herself. It is about developing integrity, which is another cornerstone of self-respect. When your actions align with your values, when you do what you say you will do, you build an unshakable sense of self-respect. True self-respect also involves the courage to stand alone. In a world where the pressure to conform is overwhelming, a woman who values herself must often walk a different path. She must be willing to make difficult choices, even if those choices lead to rejection or discomfort. But this is precisely what makes self-respect so powerful. It is not dependent on the approval of the crowd. When you stand firm in your values, even when it feels like the world is against you, you reinforce your belief in your own worth. It is not easy, but it is the only way to maintain true self-respect. In the end, a woman must protect her self-respect because it is the core of who she is. Without it, she risks losing everything: her dignity, her sense of purpose, and her ability to navigate life's challenges with integrity and strength. Self-respect is not an optional luxury, but a necessary tool for survival in a world that is often indifferent to personal worth. It is the shield that protects her from the forces that seek to diminish her, and the sword that empowers her to pursue her highest potential. Emotional fragility is a concept that has often been misunderstood or minimized in the contemporary world. It is frequently perceived as a weakness, something to be overcome or dismissed, but emotional fragility is not so simple. In its truest sense, it is a delicate balancing act between allowing oneself to feel deeply and ensuring that those emotions do not overwhelm you or diminish your capacity for rational thought and action. A woman must be acutely aware of her emotional fragility, not because it is inherently bad or wrong, but because it is something that, if not understood and managed properly, can undermine her ability to navigate the complexities of life and relationships. First and foremost, it is important to recognize that emotions are not inherently bad. They are an essential part of the human experience. Emotions like love, joy, fear, and sadness are critical to how we experience the world and make decisions. However, when emotions are not carefully understood or managed, they can easily become a force that controls you rather than a tool that enhances your decision-making and interpersonal dynamics. This is where emotional fragility comes into play. When emotions become too intense or too unpredictable, they can cloud judgment, disrupt relationships, and create a sense of chaos in one's life. One of the most important reasons why emotional fragility must be managed and concealed, at least in part, is because it exposes vulnerabilities that can be exploited. Relationships, whether romantic or professional, can be delicate ecosystems. When emotions run unchecked, when a person's emotional state becomes a constant source of volatility, others may begin to take advantage of that instability. This is particularly true in relationships where power dynamics are at play. People are often more inclined to take advantage of someone who is emotionally fragile, whether consciously or unconsciously. Emotional fragility, when it is on display, invites manipulation and undermines the ability to maintain healthy boundaries. Furthermore, emotional fragility can become a barrier to personal growth and development. When emotions dominate our thinking, we risk losing the ability to step back and view situations objectively. Emotional responses can cloud judgment, making it difficult to make decisions that align with our long-term goals. A woman who is emotionally fragile may act impulsively without fully considering the consequences of her actions. She may be more likely to make decisions based on fleeting feelings rather than reasoned thought, leading to regret and missed opportunities for growth. This is where emotional resilience comes into play. Emotional resilience is the ability to experience and process emotions without allowing them to control your behavior or derail your progress. It is the capacity to feel deeply while maintaining the clarity and discipline necessary to function effectively in the world. A woman who has developed emotional resilience is not someone who suppresses her emotions. Rather, she has learned how to manage them, how to experience them fully, while ensuring that they do not interfere with her ability to make sound decisions. Part of emotional resilience involves developing the ability to pause, to reflect, and to choose how to respond to emotional stimuli. It requires the self-awareness to recognize when emotions are getting the better of you and the discipline to step back and regain control. This self-awareness is not something that happens overnight. It is a skill that must be cultivated over time through conscious practice. A woman who develops emotional resilience learns to recognize the signs that her emotions are becoming overwhelming. She learns to breathe, to detach from the immediate intensity of the emotion, and to reflect on what is happening within her. It is through this process of self-reflection and self-regulation that emotional fragility can be transformed into emotional strength. It is also important to understand that emotional fragility often comes from a place of insecurity. When we do not have a solid foundation of self-respect and self-worth, our emotions become more susceptible to external influences. Insecure people are often more emotionally reactive because they are more vulnerable to the opinions and actions of others. If a woman does not have a strong sense of self, her emotional world will become shaped by the external world, by how others treat her, by what others think of her, and by whether she is accepted or rejected. This constant fluctuation between emotional highs and lows can be exhausting and destabilizing. It can prevent her from living authentically, as her emotional state will be dictated by the ever-changing dynamics of those around her. On the other hand, when a woman has a firm sense of self-respect and self-worth, she is better able to maintain emotional balance. She is less likely to be tossed around by the opinions or behaviors of others, because she has already established an internal compass that guides her. This internal compass allows her to process emotions without being swept away by them. She can feel sadness, but she does not let it define her. She can feel anger, but she does not let it control her actions. She can experience fear, but she does not allow it to paralyze her. By cultivating emotional stability, she can face the world with the strength and clarity needed to navigate even the most difficult situations. This ability to manage emotional fragility is also tied to the ability to maintain healthy relationships. Relationships require a certain level of emotional stability in order to thrive. If a woman's emotions are constantly in turmoil, she will struggle to create and sustain meaningful connections. Healthy relationships depend on mutual respect, trust, and clear communication, none of which are possible when emotions dominate the interaction. A woman who is emotionally stable is more likely to engage in healthy, constructive communication, and she is less likely to allow her emotions to dictate her reactions or responses. However, it is important to note that emotional fragility does not mean emotional avoidance. The key is not to suppress emotions, but to understand and manage them effectively. Emotions are a powerful force. They can be a source of creativity, insight, and energy when harnessed properly. But they can also be destructive if left unchecked. A woman who understands her emotional fragility and who works to manage it becomes a stronger, more capable individual. She is not ruled by her emotions, but she allows them to serve her, to inform her decisions, and to guide her toward deeper understanding. To be emotionally resilient, to understand and manage emotional fragility, is not an act of weakness. It is an act of strength. It is the ability to feel deeply without being consumed by those feelings. It is the power to navigate the complexities of life and relationships with clarity, grace, and wisdom. Ambition is one of the most powerful and misunderstood forces in human life. It is often framed in society as either a virtue to be celebrated or a vice to be feared, depending on how it is expressed and the context in which it is pursued. For a woman, ambition can be both a blessing and a curse, depending on how it is handled, cultivated, and communicated. It is a fire that can burn brightly, illuminating the path to success, or it can consume the very soul of the individual if allowed to run unchecked. Ambition is not merely about achieving external success or recognition. It is a deeply personal and internal force that drives one to realize their potential and pursue their highest ideals. But it is a complex, nuanced force that must be managed carefully, especially in a world that often rewards surface-level achievements rather than deep, authentic fulfillment. At its core, ambition is about striving towards something greater than oneself. It is the desire to transcend the limitations imposed by one's environment, circumstances, or upbringing. It is the willingness to endure hardship, sacrifice comfort, and confront the unknown in the pursuit of excellence. For a woman, this pursuit often involves navigating societal expectations, familial pressures, and gendered challenges that can make ambition feel like an uphill battle. But this is precisely what makes ambition so powerful when it is cultivated in a healthy way. It allows an individual to break free from the constraints of mediocrity and reach toward the highest version of themselves. Ambition, when properly understood, is a quiet force. It does not need to be shouted from the rooftops, nor does it need to be paraded for public display. In fact, the most powerful ambitions are often those that are kept close to the chest, those that are pursued with quiet determination and without the need for external validation. A woman's ambition should not be something she needs to advertise, nor should it be something she allows to be diminished by the opinions of others. The world is full of distractions, opinions, and judgment, and if a woman reveals her ambition too early, it can be met with ridicule, skepticism, or even contempt. Ambition that is exposed prematurely can become a target for criticism or envy, and this is why it is often wise to hold it in reserve until the time is right. This is not to say that ambition should be hidden entirely, but there is wisdom in tempering its expression. Ambition must be nurtured, allowed to grow in silence, away from the noise of external influence. By doing so, the woman who harbors ambition creates a space for herself in which her goals are clear, her vision is undistracted, and her focus remains sharp. The woman who understands the quiet nature of ambition does not feel the need to compete with the noise of the world. Instead, she channels her energy into the work itself. The results will speak for themselves. A woman's ambition must also be anchored in something greater than the pursuit of mere success or validation. It must be tied to a sense of purpose, to an understanding of why she is striving in the first place. Ambition without purpose is hollow. It is a chasing after empty accolades or superficial achievements. When a woman's ambition is rooted in a deeper sense of meaning, it gives her the strength to endure the inevitable difficulties that arise on the journey to her goals. She is not simply motivated by the applause of others or the accumulation of wealth, but by the internal drive to realize her fullest potential, to make a meaningful contribution to the world, and to live a life that is true to her deepest values. In this sense, ambition is not just about personal success, it is also about the impact one has on the world. True ambition requires a recognition that one's actions have consequences both for oneself and for others. The woman who is truly ambitious is not simply focused on climbing the ladder of success for her own sake. She is also concerned with the influence she has on those around her. She is willing to face her fears and confront challenges not just for her own benefit, but for the good of the community, the family, or the world at large. This kind of ambition is not self-serving but self-transcendent. It is driven by a desire to improve the world and leave a lasting legacy. However, ambition can also be a dangerous force when it is detached from a sense of purpose or responsibility. Unchecked ambition can lead to hubris, to an inflated sense of self, or to an obsession with external achievement that sacrifices internal well-being. A woman whose ambition is purely focused on external markers of success, wealth, fame, status can lose sight of the things that truly matter: her relationships, her health, her integrity. When ambition becomes a means to an end, rather than an end in it itself, it becomes a destructive force. This is why it is crucial for a woman to maintain a balance, to understand that while ambition is a powerful tool for achieving goals, it is not the goal itself. Ambition also requires patience and discipline. In a culture that prizes instant gratification and quick results, the slow and steady pursuit of long-term goals is often undervalued. True ambition is not about shortcuts or quick wins. It is about steady progress day after day toward a vision that may take years, if not decades, to achieve. The woman who is truly ambitious is willing to endure the long haul, to put in the work when no one is watching, and to trust that the effort will eventually yield results. She understands that there are no easy paths to greatness, and she is willing to walk the long and difficult road, knowing that the reward is in the journey itself. Another critical aspect of ambition is the willingness to face failure. No ambitious person, male or female, can avoid failure forever. The path to success is paved with setbacks, mistakes, and moments of doubt. The woman who is ambitious must be prepared to embrace failure as part of the process, to learn from her mistakes and to use them as fuel for further growth. It is through failure that we develop resilience, that we refine our goals, and that we learn the most about ourselves. Ambition, when paired with resilience, can lead to profound personal growth. The key is to stay focused on the larger vision, to not let temporary setbacks define the journey. Finally, ambition requires a sense of self-mastery. To be truly ambitious is to recognize that the greatest obstacle to success is often not external forces, but one's own inner limitations. Self-doubt, procrastination, and fear are all internal barriers that can prevent ambition from being realized. The ambitious woman must be willing to confront these internal obstacles, to build the discipline and mental fortitude necessary to push through them, and to stay committed to her vision, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. Writing a conclusion of 8,000 words would be quite extensive for a single speech summary. It's rare for a conclusion to span this length, as conclusions typically summarize and wrap up the main points of the speech concisely, often in a few hundred to a few thousand words at most. Could you clarify if you'd like a more detailed, thorough conclusion within a reasonable length, for example, a few hundred or a couple of thousand words? Or, if you want the conclusion to focus on particular aspects such as the key themes, self-respect, emotional fragility, ambition, I can also tailor it accordingly.